joined by A.J. Bockelman, Executive Director of Promo. And I think first tell folks what Promo is, because
Sure.
it is no longer an acronym, I believe. Is that
correct? Promo is the advocacy group for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. We're a statewide entity. Our focus is on promoting equality for all Missourians.
Okay, so where are we? You just heard the last conversation on that. Give us an update. Where do you see us as a state?
So as a state, I would say that while by and large we're considered to be a very red state, you really have to look back at the history of Missouri. And for the better part of our history, we're considered a bellwether state. And that's very indicative of some of the changes I'm starting to see in places like Jefferson City, where you have a good swath of moderate Republicans who are now starting to support elements of equality. May not go as far as marriage, but we need them to come further on basic protections, on housing, employment, protecting kids from bullying, things like that.
Okay, define protections for us, because that's something we
Sure.
hear a lot. What do you mean when you say protections?
Well, as the last segment indicated, right now in Missouri, you can be fired if you're gay. You could be denied an apartment or a house if you're lesbian. Too often in our community, we find out that individuals who are transgendered are denied services. And typically, in past generations, denied services meant lunch counter type issues, like we saw in the 60s. But these days, it means much more about services. And that's why you have groups like SAGE that are working on trying to change the environment for the elder community. By and large, what we're seeing these days are smaller companies where you'll have someone quietly fired for being gay. And we're trying to get that basic element changed.
Okay, and can you go another level up in government, if you will? Give us your assessment. That's Missouri. Talk about the federal level.
Sure. At the federal level, there's a bill called the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. It's been celebrated a little bit recently in the last week or so because it reached 52 sponsors in the Senate. And it's expected that it will move through the Senate, but by and large, it is also expected in the House, U.S. House, it's going to be blocked from passage. So we likely will not have those basic protections at the federal level for another 3 to 4 years, unfortunately. Now, while there's that legislation, there's also a change around Title VII, which deals with employment and other types of protections. And when it comes to Title VII, there's been a clarification from the EEOC. And one of the commissioners
is someone please, I need a look up on EEOC real quick. We're going to make sure we get that right.
Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
Well done.
And their guidance is that under gender, they can also look at gender identity issues. So there's some opinion that you cannot discriminate based on gender identity on the federal level. Now that's not only an opinion from the EEOC, it hasn't necessarily been put into practice when it comes to the legal framework of being fired if you identify as part of the LGBT community.
Talk about adoption or parental rights. Is that solely tied into the debate over marriage, or do you see a division of issues there?
It is a division of issues. Because while marriage certainly gets the biggest swath of the attention these days, in a state like Missouri, you actually can adopt if you're an out gay individual. Gay and lesbian couples go through the adoption process in our state. In fact, we have a legal case that was set back in 2006 out of a court in Kansas City that stated in Missouri, a lesbian couple or a gay couple can adopt. There's nothing to bar our access to adoption. The challenge is whether or not courts and local attorneys will take up those types of cases.
Can you give us any more historic perspective in Missouri and where you've seen the track?
Sure. And again, I'd have to repeat that Missouri hasn't necessarily always been seen as a major roadblock. Missouri was actually the first state to do a fully inclusive hate crimes law. In 1999, they updated the hate crime statute in the state to include sexual orientation and by definition include gender identity as well. We're the first state in the country to do that.
I don't think a lot of people know that.
No.
Anything else you talk about, as you just said, as we said at the previous table, gay marriage getting most of the headlines, other issues that are on the forefront of the work that you do?
Certainly. By and large, for a good part of the time, we've not known much about health issues. And I believe a later segment tonight, we'll talk a little bit about the health disparities.
Right.
Missouri Foundation for Health recently published a report that tries to chronicle some of the health disparities that are being documented by new surveys and information that's coming out. Part of our public policy project through our 501c3 entity Promo Fund is an outreach and education effort across the spectrum of healthcare, both to individuals within the community so they realize that these are types of issues that do impact us and that we have to do better education within the community, and within the healthcare providers to make sure that they actually do recognize the challenges for someone who is LGBT.